Israel and Iran exist in a state of constant tension, a situation that has persisted for many years. This has been the case for decades with no signs of easing. The two nations are bitter rivals in the Middle East, each viewing the other with deep suspicion and hostility. Their history is filled with mistrust, proxy conflicts, and harsh rhetoric, making any form of reconciliation seem almost impossible. The 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran marked a significant turning point in their relationship. Before the revolution, the countries had somewhat cordial relations, even cooperating on various fronts. After the revolution, Iran's new theocratic government became fiercely critical of Israel, labeling it an enemy. They saw Israel as an illegitimate state, a sentiment that has only grown stronger over the years. Adding fuel to the fire, Iran actively supports groups like Hezbollah, which operates in Lebanon. Hezbollah is a Lebanese militant group that pledges to destroy Israel, further complicating the situation. Iran also backs Hamas, a Palestinian group in conflict with Israel, adding another layer to the already complex relationship. These actions further inflame tensions between the two nations, making the prospect of peace seem distant. The possibility of a direct military confrontation is a constant worry for the region and the world, as both nations continue to prepare for the worst. Israel boasts one of the most advanced militaries in the world. Despite its small size, Israel has poured resources into defense technology. They have a history of conflict and live in a volatile region. This has made military strength a top priority. One of Israel's most potent assets is its air force. They possess a fleet of modern fighter jets, including the advanced F-35. These jets give Israel air superiority in the region. Israel can strike quickly and with precision. Another key advantage is intelligence gathering. Israel's intelligence agencies are among the best in the world. They provide crucial information for military operations and help prevent attacks. This has been vital for Israel's security. Iran's military operates differently than Israel's. They may not have the same cutting-edge technology, but Iran has developed strategies to counter Israel's strengths. They have a large and layered military apparatus. Iran's main strength lies in its ballistic missile program. They have a vast arsenal of missiles. These missiles can reach targets across the Middle East, including Israel. This capability poses a significant threat. Iran also relies heavily on proxy forces. These are groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Shia militias in Syria. They act as extensions of Iran's military. This allows Iran to project power and strike indirectly. A hypothetical conflict between Israel and Iran would likely begin with a calculated exchange. Both sides understand the devastating consequences of all-out war. They would likely aim for strategic blows to weaken the other. Israel might launch preemptive airstrikes. Their targets would be Iran's nuclear facilities and military infrastructure. The goal would be to cripple Iran's ability to retaliate effectively. Iran, in turn, might unleash a barrage of ballistic missiles. These missiles could target Israeli cities and military bases. They might also activate their proxy forces to open up multiple fronts against Israel. Section 5. A delicate balance potential outcomes of a conflict. Predicting the outcome of such a conflict is a complex and uncertain task. It would depend on various factors. These include the success of initial strikes, the effectiveness of defenses, and the willingness of either side to escalate. Israel might have the upper hand in a conventional conflict. Their superior air power and technology could give them an edge. However, Iran's missile capabilities and asymmetric tactics could inflict significant damage and drag Israel into a protracted conflict. A prolonged war would have devastating consequences for both sides. It would lead to massive casualties, economic collapse, and regional instability. The conflict could also draw in other regional and global powers, further complicating the situation. Section 6. The world is watching. International implications. A military confrontation between Israel and Iran would send shockwaves throughout the world. It would have far-reaching consequences for global security and stability. The international community would be forced to react. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, would likely provide military and diplomatic support. Other Western powers would condemn the violence and call for a ceasefire. Russia and China, with their own interests in the region, would play a complex and unpredictable role. The conflict could also exacerbate existing tensions in the Middle East. It could lead to a surge in oil prices, impacting the global economy. The humanitarian crisis resulting from the conflict would be immense, with millions displaced and in need of aid. Section 7. The nuclear threat, a shadow over the Middle East. Perhaps the most alarming aspect of an Israel-Iran conflict is the potential for nuclear escalation. The stakes are incredibly high, and the consequences could be devastating not just for the region, but for the entire world. While Israel maintains a policy of nuclear ambiguity, it is widely believed to possess nuclear weapons. This policy, often referred to as strategic ambiguity, aims to deter potential adversaries while avoiding the political fallout of openly declaring a nuclear arsenal. Iran, although it claims its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, is suspected of seeking nuclear weapons capability. The international community remains skeptical, given Iran's history of secrecy and non-compliance with nuclear inspections. In a worst-case scenario, the conflict could escalate to the use of nuclear weapons. Such an escalation would not only devastate the immediate area, but could also trigger a broader, more destructive conflict involving multiple nations. This would have catastrophic consequences for the region and the world. The radioactive fallout would spread far beyond the initial blast zone, leading to a massive loss of life, overwhelming medical facilities, and creating a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented scale. The long-term environmental damage would be unprecedented, rendering large areas uninhabitable for generations and causing severe ecological imbalances. The international community must use all diplomatic means to prevent such a scenario. Diplomatic efforts should be intensified with a focus on dialogue and negotiation to de-escalate tensions. The focus should be on reviving the Iran nuclear deal or negotiating a new agreement that addresses the concerns of all parties. Only through sustained diplomatic engagement can we hope to avert a nuclear catastrophe and ensure a more stable and peaceful Middle East. Section 8. The economic fallout, a costly conflict for all. Beyond the immediate human cost, a war between Israel and Iran would have severe economic repercussions. Both countries would suffer significant damage to their infrastructure and economies. The conflict would also disrupt global trade and energy markets. Israel, despite its strong economy, would face a heavy financial burden. The cost of military operations, coupled with the damage from Iranian missile attacks, would strain its resources. The conflict could also harm Israel's thriving tech sector, a key driver of its economic growth. Iran, already reeling under international sanctions, would see its economy plummet further. The conflict would exacerbate its existing economic woes, leading to hyperinflation, unemployment, and social unrest. The Iranian people would bear the brunt of the economic hardship. Section 9. Beyond the battlefield, seeking diplomatic solutions. The potential consequences of a military confrontation between Israel and Iran are too dire to contemplate. It is a conflict that neither side can truly win. The only viable path forward is through dialogue, diplomacy, and a commitment to peaceful coexistence. The international community must play a proactive role in facilitating dialogue between the two countries. This includes addressing the legitimate security concerns of both Israel and Iran. It also requires finding ways to build trust and reduce tensions. Regional actors such as the Arab League and the Gulf Cooperation Council can also play a constructive role. They can leverage their relationships with both sides to encourage dialogue and mediation. Section 10. The stakes are high, peace in the balance. The Israel-Iran rivalry is one of the most dangerous flashpoints in the world. The possibility of a military confrontation, however remote, should be a source of grave concern for all. The stakes are simply too high. The international community must prioritize de-escalation and work towards a peaceful resolution. This requires a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of the conflict. It also demands a commitment to dialogue and diplomacy, even in the face of provocations. The alternative, a full-blown war between Israel and Iran, is unthinkable. It would have catastrophic consequences for the region and the world, potentially leading to a wider conflict with global implications. Section 11. A call for restraint, choosing dialogue over destruction. The path ahead for Israel and Iran is fraught with challenges, both historical and contemporary. The two nations have a long history of animosity and mistrust, rooted in decades of conflict and political strife. However, the pursuit of peace must always take precedence over the pursuit of war. Peace is not just an ideal, but a necessity for the survival and prosperity of both nations. Both sides must exercise restraint and refrain from actions that could escalate the situation. This means avoiding provocations and inflammatory rhetoric. They must also be willing to engage in dialogue, even if it is difficult and uncomfortable. True diplomacy requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to compromise. The goal should be to find a modus vivendi, a way to coexist peacefully despite their differences. The world is watching, and the stakes are incredibly high. The future of the Middle East and perhaps the world hangs in the balance. The decisions made today will shape the region for generations to come. The time for dialogue, diplomacy, and a commitment to peace is now. There is no better moment to start building bridges and mending fences. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate. War brings only destruction, loss, and suffering. Peace, on the other hand, offers hope, stability, and a brighter future for all.